Tracy from MeatRx. I'm a MeatRx coach, and I'm here today with a very special guest. His name is Glenn Elzinga, and he's a former forest ecologist turned rancher. He and his wife Carol run Alder Spring Ranch, a small artisanal family ranch that has passionately produced award-winning grass-fed organic beef for over 20 years in the Idaho mountains. Alder Spring cowboys live with the cattle during the summer months, rotationally grazing them over 46,000 acres of certified organic wild permit rangeland, restoring health to ecologically sensitive areas. How are you today, Glenn?
I'm doing great. Doing great, Tracy.
Thank you for coming. And
it's a pleasure.
Oh, good. I want to begin by just hearing your success story of how you healed from eating meat. And can you begin by telling me, what did you have a different diet? Did you have health conditions that you needed to heal?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So, I guess I'm 58 right now, and it starts way back, of course, when we're just kids. And so I was an end of season baby boomer, toward the end of the boom years. And of course, the baby boom generation was the first generation that had TV. And when you have TV, you have the advertising of all the junk that really started to just cascade into the American diet very quickly. So unfortunately, my mom was susceptible to junk. and she started buying these cost saving and kitchen efficient meals. Tracy, I'm going to need counseling after this phone call because some of this stuff is embarrassing, So we'd eat like Chef Boyardee, SpaghettiOs and Hamburger Helper. And
how about TV dinners? Did you do TV dinners?
We ate TV dinners sometimes. Yeah. A lot of Weaver breaded fish sticks, take frozen pizza, all these things. They were immigrants, and they worked their hides off. I mean, those people came to this country with $64 in the early 50s and a trunk of stuff from the Netherlands. And they had nothing. They just had nothing. And so everything was penny pinching. They were the picture of the American dream. They came from post-war Europe with absolutely nothing, had no stake, no hope, and they made a living for themselves. And they just worked so hard. I remember my mom worked all day. A lot of times I latchkeyed, just let myself in the house. And here's an example. I'd sit down at the kitchen table, just being a hungry kid, young teenager, 12, 13-year-old, get out the white bread. Okay. This is kind of like Wonder white bread, and spread some margarine on it. This is like embarrassing. Okay. Margarine, because of course you don't want to eat butter because butter's bad for you. We've been listening to Mr. Keys, and he says butter's bad for us. It's going to kill us all. So of course we're eating the green slime, the margarine, and spreading that on there. And it's the cheap stuff too. It's not, we couldn't afford like Parquet. So anyway, you put that stuff on there, and then guess what? On top of that, you just put white sugar with a little bit of cinnamon, and then you slide it in the toaster oven. And that's what I ate when I got home. And so mom would come home a little bit later, and she'd try to whip something together for dinner. And a lot of times it had to be quick out of a box because she just flat didn't have time. The woman could cook. She learned to cook well, in Europe, but it was during the war, and they were severely. A lot of people in the Netherlands starved to death, literally, during occupation in Europe. But she learned to cook, and she could cook with nothing. We had a garden in the back, so occasionally she'd make us eat green beans. That's probably the reason why I'm okay at all today was probably because she made us eat our vegetables, and she made us eat meat, on weekends. But we couldn't flat afford protein. Like, it was the most expensive thing. And my dad didn't have time to hunt. He had gotten off the dairy farm when I was a kid. So there was no continual source of protein. And so we ate a ton of carbs, and highly processed. Okay, Tracy, are you sitting down there?
Yes, I am.
Spam, fried spam
Yeah,
and margarine. Okay, that was the meat. Okay, yeah. So anyway,
no fried weenies.
Oh yeah, we ate fried weenies and all that. So anyway, it was just junk, And anyway, I remember my mom, she'd cook that dinner, she'd do wash, and sometimes for whatever reason, come downstairs at midnight, and she's sewing clothes. She's sewing clothes in the parlor there. She's got the sewing machine out. And it's like every night she's sewing till 1 or 2 in the morning, and then she does it all again the next day. So they were marginless, and so they ate the cheap food, and we ate the cheap food. And according to everybody, well, the cheap food was good. Even the doctors, right? The doctors were saying, "Oh, you got to stay off. Stay away from meat. You got to stay away from butter. You got to, stay away from salt. You got to stay away from eggs. Remember that? Stay away from eggs.
Too high cholesterol.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. And the last thing a parent would want to do is be creating those cholesterol patterns early in your kids where they could die of heart attack, maybe even in their 30s or something, So anyway, they bought all this stuff because they trusted doctors. They trusted the whole medical establishment. They trusted the USDA. They trusted, the FDA. They trusted. Why wouldn't we trust the government? And so we were led to believe that this was okay. But anyway, even in my teenage years, I started to get sick. I had gut problems like you will not believe. And just I was not doing good. Just. A lot of times, even as a teenager, I remember, playing sports and stuff. I'd have a hard time, like halfway through a basketball game, my gut was starting to get affected, and I would get sick. I'd get sick halfway through a strenuous game, feeling, and I'd lose blood sugar, feel lightheaded, and I'm like, what is going on? I'd tell my mom about it, and she's like, just keep going, because she was a just keep going type. We never went to a doctor. I mean, unless if it was trauma, if you broke your arm, you go to a doctor, but you don't go to a doctor for these irritable bowel syndrome or something like that was unheard of in those days. So anyway, that went all the way through, and then I hit food at college, right? Remember that?
Yes.
Oh, it was a nightmare. It was a carb fest. It was just trash food, trash and trash and trash and trash. And then there was this, I was feeling so sick on that trash food that I stopped eating. And of course you can't do that because I'm skinny now, but imagine, skinny when you're an adolescent, early 20-something person, I just had no reserves. And so I had to eat something. So I joined this thing called the Alternative Meal Plan. But it was like all vegan, and it was vegetarian in those days. There was no such thing as vegan. And you know what? I got sicker. My guts just started really unraveling, And, this just continued, and through it all, I'm just working my rear end off trying to make it. I got through forestry school, became a forester. Started working in the mountains and the woods full time. Then I started hunting because, even then, Carol and I, we didn't have much money and we couldn't afford meat. So we started killing elk and deer. And that was actually, I remember, so satisfying when we started killing elk and deer because it's like, holy cow, I'm actually... my palate was satisfied. I was sated for like one of the first times in my life where I was like, oh, wow, this is the right thing to do. But still, I was mixing it up with all this carb junk, And there was a time when we went to the Midwest. We used to help with the corn and bean harvest because Carol's folks were corn and soybean farmers. Ironically, here we are, And so that's where my corn and soybean farm experience. I worked for different farmers around there. But I was doing the forestry thing, and then we take like 4 to 6 weeks off in the fall and go help with the harvest. And a lot of times you're short of food on a harvest. I'm drinking Pepsi because you're up all night. And I remember, Tracy, reaching into the truck behind me. I was the truck hauler of the grain, and eating whole handfuls of corn right off the field, that were just field corn. And you just eat Midwestern. I don't know if it's still like this. I think it might be. Generally, the Midwest, I think, is a food desert. And even in the grocery store, we couldn't buy good food. And I wasn't doing good at all. Most of what we ate there, on that last trip I remember we did, this was when I was in my early 40s, was carbs. I remember coming back. We're on Interstate 80 heading west, going back home to the forestry job and our home here. And I said to Carol, you know what? She said, what? I said, I think I'm dying. And she said, what are you even talking about? I said, I think I'm dying. My guts are just unraveling. I was having blood sugar problems. I couldn't stay awake. My heart, I was having AFib type stuff. I didn't even tell her about that. And I was like, I think I'm dying. So I go to a doctor when I come back, and we weren't much for doctoring. Anyway, he says, it looks like IBS. Looks like you got you could have some sort of ulceration there or something. So we're going to give you an upper endoscopy, and send that down there. Guess what? He didn't find nothing. He said, you could have early onset Crohn's. He said, we don't exactly know what caused it, autoimmune type thing. So, hey, take this Zantac. We're going to put you on high-powered prescription Zantac because you need an H blocker. And I'm like, well, what do I know? Of course. Yeah. So get on that. It made me even worse. So, I didn't know what to do, until I started reading. I started just voraciously reading books. This was before the internet really took off. So I started reading any books I could find on, diet. And so I stumbled across a guy who was kind of a semblance of what it was. His name was Jordan Rubin. And he's became kind of he started this business. I think it's called Garden of Life or something like that subsequent to this. But it was when he first wrote the book. It was the Maker's Diet book. And I read that book. And I said, you know what? I said, I'm going to try this. So I actually bought 2 milk goats and total elimination diet. I just ate meat, grass-fed meat, anti-inflammatory. Because, his whole premise was like, all these things are autoimmune triggers. And until you get off of them and get on a cleansing diet, you won't even know what's ailing you. It could be gluten or whatever, because we tried gluten, but mixed results, So anyway, did that, so I dropped all dairy except for the goats and goat cheese, and then just started eating meat. And then within 6 weeks, I started feeling quite a bit better. But it wasn't until I was still not feeling great, but I was definitely having more energy. It wasn't until 2 years ago, this coming January, that I went to a doctor friend in Montana. His name is Dr. John Madden. Dr. John Madden is a currently practicing physician in Dillon, Montana. And he's also a friend. I had his son working for me for quite a while on the ranch. But he sat my wife and I down because we were both not doing good and said, you know what, I just need to sit you guys down. And why don't you come in on a Wednesday, because then I don't have this severe appointment schedule. And so he's super atypical because he just basically sat you down for an hour and a half and just kind of outlined what the blood results showed and what he would recommend. And his recommendation was very simple. He just said, I'm gonna mention this in the first 10 minutes of conversation, and we'll talk about it for an hour. He said, I want you to just eat your meat and nothing else.
Wow.
And we're like, wow, we're like, wow. I mean, we're raising grass-fed organic beef, right? And we know it's good. I feel good on it and stuff, but we're mixing it up with all these other things. We're still eating carbs. We're still eating breads and those sorts of things. And wow. I mean, just wow. We're driving down the road thinking, wow. So my wife and I did it. And so it's been 2 years now. And talk about life changing, the complete elimination. I did complete elimination of most stuff back, with the makers thing, but then transitioned back in and tried to get, vegetables back integrated and stuff. But we grow a big garden here, Tracy. And it's like that year I stopped eating out of the garden,
Wow.
I mean, I was a kale freak, I was eating tons of kale. I was eating a lot of meat, but I was eating tons of stuff out of our garden. What could be wrong with that, right? Who knew?
Right.
So anyway, what was crazy though, when we got off that thing was, and I don't want to mince words with anybody. I want to make it very clear. It was hell for the first 6 weeks. It was hell both in your head and in terms of your body, because we started to have these weird things happen. Like my wife looked at my back once and I said, my back is on fire. My back is on fire here. And she got me under a light. She actually shone a bright light down on my back, and there was all these sparkles on my back. So guess what? Go to the internet, find out about that. Oxalate crystals. Oxalate crystals come because I was an oxalate junkie, right? Kale. Eating vegetables out of the garden, broccoli, I loved all the coals. They're all oxalate rich, So I'm eating all these crazy things that are rich in oxalates. And guess what? They're coming out of my freaking back, and I told my brother about it, my MD brother, and he almost hung up the phone. He's like, you're crazy. There's something wrong with you. And it's not this meat thing. It's not your vegetables you ate. It's not your blood sugar. You're nuts. You're crazy. You're crazy in the head. This is not even, but anyway, I found out it was a real thing, So anyway, it took quite a while. It took like a month or two for me to get out of the back eruption stuff. And I guess it manifests in different people in different ways, but it depends on what your oxalate loads are, and mine was high because I was mainlining these cruciferous vegetables, Wow, who knew? But anyway, after I got over that hump, wow, I started to get like energy that, guess what, Tracy, I had never had in my entire life. I mean, I finally knew what it felt like to feel good. And so I lost about 25 pounds right off the bat. And I didn't think I was fat before. Okay. But what I realized was, and I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that 25 pounds, a lot of it was just flat inflammation of my whole abdominal area. Now I see people walking down the street. Carol and I will look at them and say, I don't think they're overweight. I think they're just inflamed. They're just flat swollen with inflammation. And, so that inflammation came off pretty dang quick because I started to feel great. It started to sleep better at night. My wife, Carol, she stopped, having apnea issues. That all went away. We both lost pounds. She lost a lot of weight pretty quickly, probably 50 pounds. I lost about 25 to 30. And that's where we are today. That's actually where we are today. And it's like, this work we do on the range, living with it, that just beats the living tar out of your body. There's very few people who can put up with it for more than 5 to 6 days at a time. Even these young people we hire based on physical fitness and mental fitness. They got to be able to handle it up there. Because, in the social media world, those kids that we hire, a lot of them are just addicted to the phone or addicted to TikTok or, messaging or whatever. They cannot handle being away from it. Okay. And they lose it. So, we interview them really hard for that to make sure that they have, pretty good psycho-emotional fitness, because I say to them, even at your state where you seem pretty stable, I think you're going to crack. You are going to find a place where you're going to reach bottom up there, because it is so hard. I mean, you're like 14 to 15 hours a day on a saddle horse in super rough country. You're riding through broken timber. You could get your head ripped off anytime by low branches on trees if you're not paying attention. Then you got to pay attention to your horse, take care of your horse the whole time. And you got to, mind these cattle the whole time. It's very intensive. It's very intensive. I had a gentleman come up there this year. He wanted to volunteer for me. He met me at a conference a couple years ago, and he's my age. He's retired, and he's in good shape. Doug was in great shape, and but after the first few days in the timber, he said, "You know what? This is not my country." He's from New Mexico. He said, I'm having a hard time getting used to this, and it was kicking his butt. And I don't hold it against him because it kicks my butt when I go up there, but I can't imagine not doing it on the carnivore diet. Tracy, I go up there in cow camp and these kids bring ramen to cow camp. And I tell them not to, but they do. They bring ramen and white bread. And I'm absolutely in shock. And it's just a testament to how resilient we are as humans when we're young.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But let me tell you, when you reach your 50s and 60s, resiliency's out. You're totally on the edge of margin all the time. And if you reach the tipping point and slip into, a little bit of carbo, get out of the keto mode, you're screwed in that kind of, physically demanding situation. So it really came clear to me. It's like, oh my gosh, this totally changed the way I can look at this thing, because I can survive. I remember when we first switched into this. Am I going too long?
No, you're not.
Okay. When I first switched into this carnivore thing, my kids thought, oh gosh, Dad's going to die. He's going to die, And part of the carnivore thing I was doing, and this is what Dr. John Madden recommended. He said, I want you to fast once a week, just once a week, and just clean out, just empty out, and just make it like a minimum 24-hour deal, 36 preferred. So I said, yeah, I'll do that, whatever. Anyway, so this fast thing, I think it was every 5 days. So, the calendar days would hit. And my kids and I are like in the off season, the cattle are home. We're feeding them at home here on the ranch. We're feeding them hay because everything's, frozen and it's all wintry. So they're still grazing, but they're eating hay at the same time. So pretty low maintenance time of year for us. So we ski. I've raised all my kids to be just crazy skiers, and they're actually way better than I am. So, and we do a lot of backcountry skiing. We'll climb up mountains on modified downhill gear, and we'll ski down these crazy places. But a lot of times, we go to a ski area. It's nearby, and they have like 5 chairlifts, and it's called Lost Trail Powder Mountain. It's this family place, but it has some really challenging, good terrain, and it's got, I don't know if you ski, Tracy, but it has powder like almost every time we go, and the powder is like between 2 to 4 feet deep. And my kids are going to kill me for mentioning this on the podcast because they don't want anybody else to come to their ski area. So anyway. Son of a gun, my dang fast day is a ski day. And I'm like demoralized. And I'm demoralized because I know I'm burning calories like a wild man on ski days because I'm trying to keep up with these stupid kids who are just, they're just bombing down through trees, through deep powder, going over jumps. And old Glenn is 58, trying to keep up with them, and I could ski pretty good, but they ski like animals, So anyway, lunchtime is coming, and I have not been doing good on this carnivore thing, but I'm going to stick with it. And what I realize now, Tracy, is that ketosis hadn't happened yet. So anyway, I'm getting lunchtime and I am like running out of juice. I'm like, and just skiing in slow motion. Kids turn to me like on the chairlift. I'm out of breath on the chairlift. I'm like, thank God there's chairlifts. Thank God there's chairlifts because I would die without that break, 20-minute ride to the top. And they were like, Dad, are you okay? And yeah, I'm okay. Don't worry. Anyway, back to the lodge for lunch. Okay. So they're just, eating all their good food and then my kids eat good. They eat way better than I did when they were kids. They don't eat junk food at all. They they'll make their own food. They'll always have meat integrated in there. They eat a lot of vegetables, very diverse diet. And they all feel great. And they're looking at me nervously. They're like, Dad's not eating over there. you know, and they're freaking out because they know that I need to eat because I got blood sugar problems up to crazy. And they're like, Dad, you got to eat something, dude. You got to eat. You can't make it this afternoon. And I'm like, I can't make it this afternoon. But I said to Carol, I said to the doc, I'm going to do this fast thing. It is a fast day. They're like, you're not eating at all? You didn't eat breakfast? No breakfast. Oh, God. You know, so they're like, oh, Dad's a moron. Dad's a moron. You know, this whole carnivore thing to them was a moron thing, you know. So I'm just telling you this because I know there's going to be listeners out there who are struggling with the moron view. When people look at you and say, you know what, you're a moron, dude. You know, eat some other stuff, you know. Anyway, so I put my skis on at the end of lunch and we get on the lift and I'm like nervous. And anyway, we picked this long run. It's called it's out of bounds. My kids like skiing out of bounds. They go through the thing that says, do not ski past this point, not patrolled. You know, they're like, Dad, let's go here. There's powder out here. And they got these little go back trails that you can cut back into the ski area and get back to the lift, you know. And we know most of the people up there and the patrol people. So it's like, yeah, that's them. Let them go, whatever, you know. So anyway, I'm going with these kids to this out of bounds area. And I'm on top there in the wind. The snow is blowing up there and there's deep powder, like 2 to 3 feet. And it's essentially a wilderness down there. And it's pretty steep. And I'm like, I don't know if I can pull this off, you know, because powder skiing is a joy, but it's very like strenuous. Anyway, kids take off one by one. You just see this little poof of snow dust going down there and they're just bombing through all this open terrain and in trees and it's beautiful blue sky day. And I bail off that sucker and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. And halfway down that hill, Tracy, something just went bink. And I got down to the bottom of the mountain. And I swear I could ski for days without eating. You know, what it was, and I still had all that weight on, but ketosis just went boom. I just forced the hand somehow. I don't know what's happening biochemically. I'm not an expert there, right? But I guess it was ketosis, and I just started burning fat. That afternoon, I burned fat, and I skied like an animal. And that was life-changing for me when I reached that tipping point. So, you know, stick with it, folks. You know, if you haven't reached that ketosis stage, you know, to where you got to make that tipping point. For me, it was that fast compared, you know, with that exercise that said, oh my gosh, you know, I got to just reach that tipping point. And once I hit that ketosis burn, I was like, holy cow. All of a sudden I could think clearly. I could ski like an idiot again and keep up with the kids, right? Just wanted to keep up with the kids. So anyway, so that was cool. That was a tipping point. That was a major change, game changer for me to reach that point because it gave me the realization that this stuff was real and that the carnivore thing could work. And ever since then, I've just been totally galvanized. I drink a little bit of coffee yet. I'm not like this 100% religious purist. The kids make a birthday cake, you know, for the grandkids or something. I took a little bite of it. So I'm not like this super anal perfect purist, but I am like 99.9% carnivore. I mean, you know, this morning for breakfast, 100% carnivore. Last night for, you know, and you get creative so that it doesn't get boring. You know, like I told Sean a little while ago, I love ribeye. I think I could eat ribeye every day, but there's some days I just say, you know, I really feel like some salmon today. So I keep, you know, stashes of that stuff just to maintain diversity that matches my palate. Because I think it's important to start paying attention to our palates. Because our palates are there for a reason. And the palate is there to simply tell us whether or not we're on track. Once we get our head cleared of all the crap, you know, all the toxic junk we've been eating, and we start listening to our body, that palate, just that element of appetite, starts telling you what you need to eat and how you need to balance and how you need to do it well. So anyway, you know, that would be my advice to a carnivore is first, stick with it, get through those first few months, and two, start trying to pay attention to what your body's trying to tell you. of what you should be eating, because sometimes I overdose on red meat. I'm like, crap, I ate, 4 pounds of beef in the past day and a half. Let's downshift a little bit and eat some, maybe it's goat cheese, maybe it's fish, something. So it's just whatever my palate tells me to eat. And that's how it's easy to run. That's the problem with the carnivore thing. And you and I were talking about that earlier, is that it's really just listening to your body, and you're just eating meat. It's such a simple solution that when we talk to our friends and loved ones about what we're doing and why we're doing it, and we're trying to help them and we're trying to provide them hope, where they're going in and out of doctors, it's a revolving door with medicine. And there's so few doctors like Sean or like John Madden who helped me, that can get people kind of grounded on the why and the how, and speak from a professional level about how to be convincing, from biochemical professional level where people are going to embrace that. But if it's just me, their buddy, saying, dude, I've just eaten carnivore and it's changed my life, they have a hard time taking it seriously, because it's just too simple for them. And this business of listening to your appetite and your palate, way too simple. Because for them that means I can go to McDonald's and have a supersized meal, with all the trimmings, So there's, we're at a loss as a culture for being in touch with our body and listening to our appetite. But it takes a while to get that back. And once you get that back, that's exciting stuff, especially within the parameters of carnivore, because boy, you get hope. You start getting hopeful about life again. Holy cow.
Yeah, carnivore is the answer. Carnivore is totally the answer for many health conditions, almost any health condition you can name.
Oh man, think of all the autoimmune stuff, it's just really nailing a lot of the autoimmune stuff. And it's because I think there's things we don't know that are in meat that can speak to those autoimmune issues that, veganism isn't doing. That, the cows, even a feedlot cow, is picking up a ton of phytochemical diversity, polyphenols and stuff that we can't get from plants. And I don't even think we know what they are. We talk about things like carnitine and taurine. I think there's more, I think there's a lot more, because here's the deal about that stuff, Tracy, is that there's no research. There's no pharmaceutical trust that's going to pay for this kind of research. Okay. Because it's totally against their paradigm of what wellness is, because they're treating symptoms, not cures. They're providing symptom care, and they're not providing cures. So anyway, well, I'm preaching to the choir here.
Oh, no. Well, I've been 2 years carnivore also, and I know exactly what you're saying. And I know that it's difficult sometimes to get started, but
it's tough.
That's what you need to do is, and like you said, age is really, if you're young, you can get away with a lot of stuff. You
can. I just can't believe what people eat, when they're young. And I'm like, let me leave you with this little one. Carol and I are coming back to the ranch yesterday from Chalice. There's a nice hot springs in Chalice. So we were at that hot springs, and we came back down the back road up our valley, and we live in the middle of nowhere. And here's 2 of our neighbors on horseback. They're picking up some cattle that have strayed off. They run on ranges too. And they're gathering these cattle, and there's 2 guys on horseback. And there's one who has a horse trailer. He's got his horse in it. So he's going to go up, and they're going to bring these cattle down. But right there, blocking the road, this is common in our county. People, the 2 pickups will come like this, and they'll talk for a long time. And I do the same thing. It's like talking to neighbors, see how things are going. Because, we live a ways apart. So, and you recognize their pickup, so you start talking. But what the traffic jam was on this one was that the Schwanns ice cream truck man was there. And we couldn't get through because he was blocking the road. And he's not out of gas. He's not parked. It's because these 3 cowboys I know are buying stuff from him to throw in the horse trailer that they're going to eat that night. So they're getting frozen pizzas out and ice cream bars and all this stuff. They're just getting it out of Schwann's guy, and they're making the exchange right there in the middle of nowhere on this county road. I mean, there's no houses out here. It's just, this county road through sagebrush where you can see 60 miles, and here's a Schwann's truck, 2 guys on horseback and a guy with a stock trailer and another horse. And I ride up to him and say, in our Yukon, and say, "So Caden, what's happening, man? You're just getting some victuals for tonight?" He said, "You betcha." And they're just stocking up, but they're all young guys. These guys are all in their 20s and 30s, and they're just living their dream, eating Schwanns without realizing what they could be doing for their later in lifetime. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. And, know exactly what you mean.
And I just looked at those guys, and they're good guys, and they're starting to gain weight around the middle, and it's like, crap, dude, you're heading down the road to, in your 50s even, your sleep could be affected. You could be on a CPAP, which are, I didn't realize, but that, they're so ubiquitous. So many people are on CPAPs, I'm just blown away by that. And here's a ticket out. Here's the easy ticket out. Just eat meat.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I wanted to talk to you about your website a little bit, just to let people know where they can order your meat. And I saw your beautiful family. You have 7 beautiful daughters, and your wife is gorgeous. It's so neat. And anyway, if you wouldn't mind to tell everyone where they can connect with you.
Sure. So the cool way to just follow what's happening on the ranch is Instagram, and that's Alderspring_ranch, Alderspring_ranch. And that's our Instagram handle. And the kids kind of run that. The older daughters, especially, they'll post stories on there and post tons of pictures. Occasionally I'll put a rant on there where I talk about something that's bothering me out in agriculture or whatever. But usually they just post fun stuff and fun pictures of what we do and how we do it. So that's the coolest way. And then if you want to learn more, you can go to alderspring.com, and there's an extensive website there. Carol and the girls have put together a ton of information about all kinds of things, like how to source grass-fed beef, how to cook grass-fed beef. There's this whole thing that one of the kids put together called the Meat Hacker, and it's a blog, it's a cooking blog called Meat Hackers, and you can just Google Meat Hacker, and that's her deal, and it'll tell you how to cook everything, whether it be a roast or a steak, or how to cook. I'm very picky about how to grill a ribeye, for instance, and there's a long thing about how to grill a ribeye, and there's another one about, I think, how to cook a burger right, So if you want to explore meat and you need a good place to learn how to cook it, Meat Hacker, that's a good place. Then of course, you can click on the store anywhere in there. And this is not a mercenary deal, but that's the way people buy beef from us. And I'm just going to be straight up with you. We're sold out like 90% of the time. And for the community of the Meat RXers and people listening to this testimonial, I'll give you the inside scoop on information. And it's on Tuesday night at 5 p.m. Rocky Mountain time. Is when we post new inventory every week. We have new inventory coming in every week because we process beef all the way through the year. We don't store it. There's a lot of people who know that store beef, they kill once a year, process once a year, and they store beef all year, and then they deal that out all the way through the season. And for us, that's unthinkable because we see downfall in quality sitting in that freezer. And it starts showing up by a little off-gassing. People think that once frozen, you're good. But if you're not like 20 below zero or colder, that meat is denaturing in the freezer all the way through the year, and it's not freezer burned. I mean, say you vacuum packed it, the vacuum pack is still sealed. You'll start seeing all these little pock marks of off-gassing because it's biologically active, even though it's frozen. It's just like our soils out here. I talked to a soil biologist. They said, oh, no. It was Nicole Masters. She said, no, your soils are living all the way through the winter as well. If you have a living soil, there's fungal activity, there's bacterial activity. It's just slow, and the same thing with meat. Meat is a biological food. And if there's going to be biological and biochemical activity and process in there, even with the meat frozen. So we try to roll everything over all the time and keep up with that fresh demand. So Tuesday night at 5 is when everything posts. And unfortunately, because of COVID demand, what would last an entire week now lasts about 24 hours, and it's pretty much gone.
Wow.
So, and that's cool in one regard because we don't have to try marketing it so much, but on the other regard is I really want to just be able to bless people with the beef. And so it gets frustrating that we can't. Shawn was like, well, just go grow your business, and I'm like, there's also just about having a life, and enjoying it rather than just scaling up and trying to go crazy to meet demand. We value our quality of life and want to keep it that way. If you don't factor joy and peace into the equation, well, then you better rethink your equation, because we have a short life here, Tracy, and we better live it in joy and peace. So even today, my wife and I were talking, it's like, we think about how to transition it to the kids, because we're, almost 60, and just to put it bluntly, we don't want to work our asses off all the way through the rest of our life, because we have been, up to this point. A lot of times when I was sick before Carnivore, I was working 3 jobs, 2 full-time jobs and a part-time job, trying to pull it all together, trying to make it all roll. And it was a lot of work. And, I don't think I could do that anymore, even under Carnivore. My body's, it's 58, right? So it's time to breathe and enjoy the grandkids.
Exactly. I saw you had a couple of grandkids in your picture on the website.
Oh man, yeah, no, they're awesome. They're awesome. So
that's great.
But anyway, Tracy, it's been a pleasure.
It sure has, and I thank you so much for coming and sharing with everyone, and I hope to see you again soon.
Oh no, that's great. I told Shawn, I said, hey, next time we do Meet Our Ex, we need to do it remotely, up there in the mountains on horseback or something. And he was down for it. He thought that was sounding like a good idea. So we got to get him out of there, get him out of California and get him up here. So
yeah, that'd be great.
And you should come with him.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Glenn.
All right. Well, thanks, Tracy. It's been great visiting with you. And you continue to be blessed on your carnivore journey. It's not always easy, but it is a lot of fun because I got a lot more energy to laugh than I used to.
Yes, exactly. That's awesome. Thanks so much, Glenn.
All right. Take care. Thanks again.